Hello again. It's good to be with you again. I hope you're enjoying this new book that we've just started, The Horse and His Boy. Tonight we're going to read chapters 3 and 4. Do you recall that in chapters 1 and 2 we met a young boy named Shasta, and we've met a young lady named Aravis, and we've met two talking horses, Shasta's horse Bree and Aravis's horse is Hwin, and they are both trying to escape from Calormen and get into Narnia, where they both want to be. And the horses are talking horses and were captured from Narnia, so all four of them want to get there. And as we left the story last night, they've started their journey together, the four of them, and Tarkina, Aravis, is going to start telling her story. So let's hear what we have to hear from Aravis. At the gates of Tashban, chapter 3. My name, said the girl at once, is Aravis Tarkina, and I am the only daughter of Kidrash Tarkan, the son of Elombre Tisroc, the son of Ardib Tisroc, who was descended in a straight line from the god Tash. My father is the lord of the province of Calavar, and is the one who has the right of standing on his feet in his shoes before the face of the Tisroc himself. May he live forever. My mother, on whom may be the peace of the gods, is dead, and my father had married another wife. One of my brothers has died in battle against the rebels in the far west, and the other is just a child. Now it came to pass that my stepmother, my father's second wife, hated me, and the sun appeared dark in her eyes as long as I lived in my father's house. And so she persuaded my father to promise me in marriage to Ahoshta Tarkan. Now this Ahoshta is of very low birth, even though in latter years he has won the favor of the Tisroc, may he live forever, by flattery and evil counsels. And now he has been made a Tarkan and the lord of many cities, and is likely to be chosen as the Grand Vizier when the present Grand Vizier dies. Moreover, he is at least 60 years old and has a hump on his back, and his face resembles that of an ape. Nevertheless, my father, because of the wealth and the power of this Ahoshta, and being persuaded by his wife, sent messengers offering me in marriage. And the offer was favorably accepted, and Ahoshta sent word that he would marry me this very year at the end of the summer. When this news was brought to me, the sun appeared dark in my eyes, and I laid myself on my bed, and I wept for a day. But on the second day I rose up, and I washed my face, and I caused my mare Hwin to be saddled, and took with me a sharp dagger, which my brother had carried in the Western wars, and I rode out alone. And when my father's house was out of sight, I came to a great green open place in a certain wood where there were no dwellings of men. I dismounted from Hwin my mare, and I took out the dagger. And then I parted my clothes where I thought that the readiest way lay to my heart, and I prayed to all the gods that there were. And after that, as soon as I was dead, I prayed that I might find myself with my brother. After that, I shut my eyes and prepared to drive the dagger into my heart. But before I had done so, this mare spoke with the voice of the daughters of men, and she said, "Oh, no, my mistress, do not by any means destroy yourself. For if you live, you may yet have good fortune. But all the dead are dead alike." "I didn't say it half so well as that," said the mare. "Hush, ma'am, hush," said Bree, who was thoroughly enjoying this story. "She's telling it in the grand Calormene manner, and no storyteller in a Tisroc's court could do it any better. Pray go on, Tarkina." "When I heard the language of men uttered by my mare," said Aravis, "I said to myself, the fear of death has disoriented my reason and subjected me to delusions. And I became full of shame, for no one of my lineage ought to fear death more than fearing the biting of a gnat. Therefore, I addressed myself a second time to the stabbing. But Hwin came near me and put her head in between me and the dagger. and talked to me and gave me the most excellent reasons and rebuked me as a mother rebukes her daughter. And my wonder was so great that I forgot about killing myself and about Ahashta, and I said, "Oh, my mare, how is it that you have learned to speak like the daughters of men?" And Twin Hwin told me what she has now told to all this company, that in Narnia there are beasts that talk, and how she herself was stolen from thence when she was just a little foal. She also told me of the woods and the waters of Narnia, of the castles and the great ships, until I said, "In the name of Tash and Azeroth and Zarnina, Lady of the Night, I have a great wish to be in this country of Narnia." "Oh, my mistress," said the mayor, "if you were in Narnia, you would be happy, for in that land no maiden is forced to marry against her will." And when we had talked together for a great time, hope returned to me, and I rejoiced that I had not killed myself. Moreover, it was agreed between Hwin and me that we should steal ourselves away together, and we planned it in this fashion. I would return to my father's house, and I would put on my gayest clothing and sing and dance for my father and pretend to be delighted with the marriage which he had prepared for me. And also I said to him, "Oh, my father and the delight of my eyes, give me your license and permission to go with one of my maidens alone for 3 days into the woods to offer sacrifices to Zarnina, Lady of the Night, and of maidens, as it is proper and customary for damsels when they must bid farewell to the service of Zarnina and prepare themselves for marriage." And my father said, "Oh, my daughter, and the delight of my eyes, so shall it be." But when I came out from the presence of my father, I went immediately to the oldest of his slaves, his secretary, who had dandled me on his knees when I was a baby and loved me more than air and light, and I swore him to be secret and begged him to write a certain letter for me. And he wept and implored me to change my resolution, but in the end he said, "To hear is to obey." And he did all at my will, and I sealed the letter and hid it. "But what was in the letter?" said Shasta. "Be quiet, youngster," said Bree. "You're spoiling the story. She'll tell you about the letter in the right place. Go on, Tarkina." Then I called the maid who was to go with me into the woods and perform the rites of Zarnina and told her to wake me very early in the morning. And I became very merry with her and gave her wine to drink. But I had mixed such things in her cup that I knew she must sleep for a night and a day. And as soon as the household of my father had committed themselves to sleep, I arose and put on the armor of my brother, which I always kept in my chamber in his memory. I put it into my girdle all the money I had and certain choice jewels, and provided myself also with food, and saddled the mare with my own hands, and rode away in the second watch of the night. I directed my course not to the woods where my father supposed that I would go, but north and east of Tashbaan. Now for 3 days and more I knew that my father would not seek me, being deceived by the words I had said to him. And on the 4th day we arrived at the city of Azim Bulda. Now Azim Bulda stands at the meeting of many roads, and from it the posts of the Tisroc, may he live forever, ride on swift horses to every part of the empire, and it is one of the rights and privileges of the greater Tarkans to send messages by them. I therefore went to the chief of the messengers in the house of imperial posts in Azimbalda, and I said, "O dispatcher of messages, here is a letter from my uncle, Ahashta Tarkan, to Kidrash Tarkan, Lord of Kalavar. Now, take these 5 crescents and cause it to be sent to him." And the chief of the messengers said, "To hear is to obey." This letter I pretended that it was written by Ahashta, and this was what I wrote. "Ahashta Tarkan to Kidrash Tarkan, salutations and peace." In the name of Tash the irresistible, the inexorable, be it known to you that as I made my journey toward your house to perform the contract of marriage between me and your daughter Tarish, Aravis Tarkina, it pleased fortune and the god that I fell in with her in the forest, where she had ended the rites and sacrifices of Zardina, according to the customs of maidens. And when I learned who she was, being delighted with her beauty and discretion, I became inflamed with love, and it appeared to me that the sun would be dark to me if I did not marry her at once. Accordingly, I prepared the necessary sacrifices, and I married your daughter the same hour that I met her, and have returned with her to my own house. And we both pray and charge you to come here as speedily as you wish, so that we may be delighted with your face and speech, and also that you may bring with you the dowry of my wife, which, by reason of my great charges and expenses, I require without delay. And because you and I are brothers, I assure myself that you will not be angered by the haste of my marriage, which is wholly occasioned by the great love I bear your daughter, and I commit you to the care of all the gods. And as soon as I had done this, I rode on in all my haste from Azimbalda, fearing no pursuit, and expecting that my father, having received some letter, would send a message to Ahashta or go to him himself, and that before the matter was discovered, I would be well beyond Tashbaan. And that is the essence of my story until this very night, when I was chased by lions and met you in the swimming of the salt water. And what happened to the girl, the one you drugged? Said Shasta. Oh, doubtless she was beaten for sleeping late, said Aravis coolly, but she was a tool and a spy of my stepmother's. I am very glad that they could beat her. I say, that's hardly fair, said Shasta. I didn't do any of these things for the sake of pleasing you, said Aravis. And then there's another thing I don't understand about that story. You're not grown up. I don't believe you're any older than I am. I don't believe you're even as old. How could you be getting married at such a young age? Aravis said nothing, but Bree said at once, Shasta, don't display your ignorance. They're always married at that age in the great Tarkhan families. Shasta turned very red, although it was hardly light enough for the others to see this, and felt snubbed. Aravis asked Bree for his story, and Bree told it, and Shasta thought he put in a great deal more than he needed to about the falls and the bad riding. Bree obviously thought it was very funny, but Aravis did not laugh. And when Bree had finished, they all went to sleep. Next day, all four of them, 2 horses and 2 humans, continued on their journey together. Shasta thought it had been much pleasanter when he and Bree were on their own. For now it was Bree and Aravis who did nearly all the talking. Bree had lived a long time in Calormen and had always been among Tarkhans and Tarkhan's horses, and of course he knew a great many of the same people and places that Aravis knew. She would always be saying things like, but if you were at the fight of Zalindra, you would have seen my cousin Alamash. And Bree would answer, oh, yes, Alamash. He was only captain of the chariots, you know. I don't quite hold with chariots or the kind of horses who draw chariots. That's not the real cavalry. But he is a worthy nobleman. He filled my nosebag with sugar one day after the taking of Tebeth. Or else Bree would say, I was down at the lake of Mesril that summer. And Aravis would say, oh, Mesril, I have a friend there, Lajraline Tarkina. What a delightful place it is. Those gardens, the valley of 1,000 perfumes. Bree was not in the least trying to leave Shasta out of things, though Shasta thought he really was. But people who know a lot about the same things can't help talking about them. And if you're there, you can't help feeling like you're out of it. Wynn the mare was rather shy before a great war horse like Bree and said very little. And Aravis never spoke to Shasta at all if she could help it. Soon, however, they had more important things to think about. They were getting near Tashbaan. There were more and larger villages and more people on the roads. They now did nearly all their traveling by night, and hid as best they could during the day. And at every halt, they argued and argued about what they would do when they finally reached Tashbaan. Everyone had been putting off this difficulty, but now it could be put off no longer. During these discussions, Aravis had become a little, very little, less unfriendly to Shasta. One usually gets on better with people when one is making plans than when one is talking about nothing in particular. Bree said that the first thing they should do was to fix a place where they would all promise to meet on the far side of Tashbaan, even if, by any luck, they got separated in passing the city. He said that the best place would be the tombs of the ancient kings on the very edge of the desert. Things like great stone beehives, he said. You can't possibly miss them. And the best of it was that none of the Calormenes will go near them because they think the place is haunted by ghosts and they're afraid of it. Aravis asked, is it not really haunted by ghosts? Bree said that he was a free Narnian horse and didn't believe in these Calormene tales. And then Shasta said that he wasn't a Calormene either and didn't care a straw about these old stories of ghosts. This wasn't quite true, but it rather impressed Aravis, though at the moment it annoyed her too. And of course she said she didn't mind any number of ghosts either. So it was settled that the tombs should be their assembly place on the other side of Tashbaan, and everyone felt that they were getting on very well, until Hwin humbly pointed out that the real problem was not where they should go when they got through Tashbaan, but how were they to get through it? We'll settle that tomorrow, ma'am, said Bree. Time for a little sleep now. But it wasn't easy to settle. Aravis's first suggestion was that they should swim across the river below the city during the night and not go into Tashbaan at all. But Bree had two reasons against this. One was that the river was very wide and it would take too long a swim for Hwin to do, especially with a rider on her back. He thought it would be too long for himself, too, but he didn't want to say that. The other was that it would be full of shipping, and of course anyone on the deck of a ship who saw two horses swimming past would almost certainly be inquisitive. Shasta thought that they should go up the river above Tashbaan and cross it where it was narrower. But Bree explained that there were gardens and pleasure houses on both sides of the river for miles, and that there would be Tarkans and Tarkinas living in them, and riding about on the roads and having water parties on the river. In fact, it would be the most likely in the place in the world to meet someone who would recognize Aravis or even himself. We'll have to have a disguise, said Shasta. Hwin said that it looked to her as if the safest thing would be to go right through the city itself from gate to gate, because no one was less likely to be noticed in a crowd. But she approved of the idea of a disguise as well. She said, both the humans will have to dress in rags and look like peasants or slaves. And all Aravis's armor and our saddles and things must be made up into bundles and put on our backs, and the children must pretend to drive us, and people will think we're only pack horses. My dear Hwin, said Aravis rather scornfully, as if anyone could mistake Bree for anything but a war horse, no matter how you disguised him. I should think not, indeed, said Bree, snorting, and let his ears going back ever so little. I know it's not a very good plan, said Hwin, but I think it's our only chance. And we haven't been groomed for ages, and we are looking not quite ourselves. I'm sure I'm not. And I do think if we get well plastered with mud and go along with our heads down as if we're tired and lazy, and we don't lift our hoofs hardly at all, we might not be noticed. And our tails ought to be cut shorter. Not neatly, you know, but all ragged. My dear madam, said Bree, have you pictured to yourself how very disagreeable that would look to arrive in Narnia in that condition? Well, said Hwin humbly, she was a very sensible mare. The main thing is to get there. Though nobody liked it much, it was Hwin's plan that had to be adopted in the end. It was a troublesome one, and it involved a certain amount of what Shasta called stealing, and Bree called raiding. One farm lost a few sacks that evening, and another lost a coil of rope the next, but some tattered old boys' clothes for Erebus to wear had to be fairly bought and paid for in a village. Shasta returned with them in triumph, just as evening was closing in. The others were waiting for him among the trees that lay across their path. Everyone was feeling excited because this was the last hill that they had to go up, and when they reached the ridge at the top, they would be looking down at Tashbaan. I do wish we were safely past it, muttered Shasta to Hwin. I do too, said Hwin fervently. That night, they wound their way through the woods up to the ridge by a woodcutter's track. And when they came out of the woods, on the top, they could see thousands of lights down in the valley below them. Shasta had no notion of what a great city would look like, and it frightened him. They had their supper, and the children got some sleep, but the horses woke them very early in the morning. The stars were still out, and the grass was terribly cold and wet, but daybreak was just beginning, far to their right across the sea. Erebus went a few steps into the wood and came back looking odd in her new ragged clothing and carrying her real ones in a bundle. These and her armor and shield and scimitar and the 2 saddles and the rest of the horse's fine furnishings were put into the sacks. Bree and Hwin had already gotten themselves as dirty and bedraggled as they could, and it only remained to shorten their tails. As the only tool for doing this was Erebus's scimitar, one of the packs had to be undone again in order to get it out. It was a longish job, and it rather hurt the horses. My word, said Bree, if I wasn't a talking horse, what a lovely kick in the face I could give you. I thought you were going to cut it, not pull it out. That's what it feels like. But in spite of the semi-darkness and cold fingers, all was done in the end, and the children got onto the horses, the rope halters, which they were now wearing instead of bridles and reins, in the children's hands, and the journey began. Remember, said Bree, keep together if we possibly can. If not, meet at the tombs of the ancient kings, and whoever gets there first must wait for the others. And remember, said Shasta, don't you 2 horses forget yourselves and start talking, whatever happens. And that's the end of chapter 3. I think we're going to stop there. It's a long chapter. Next time we'll go to chapter 4. Thank you. Lovely to be with you again, and I hope I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.